certainly not all books that are marketed as YA or younger reading in general have the type of flaws that come to mind whenever I say things like, I don't typically like YA, but I think this book is a good use case to talk about why I tend to have some issues and how you can avoid them and still make it work. And so we're going to talk about it. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about Vanisher Chronicles of the Warren by Tom Grimwood. Now, this was a review copy that was sent to me, and it was noted as being YA, and I was still willing to give it a shot because it was very short, and I will say that. And also, just the premise of this, I think, sounds really cool. And I was really excited about it, and when I started reading it, I'm like, ooh, this is going to be so much fun. And then I ended up having some things that were a little bit more disappointing throughout. And so that's where this is, part review, part talking about in general, where issues are, because there's things here that I've seen definitely in other places. So I want to extrapolate a little bit. We'll talk first though about the book itself. So the premise here is there's this land where there were all of these, adventurers for a long time, and basically they did everything. There's no more mythical beasts. There's no more big villains. There's no more quests. It's like they've done everything. And now there's all these adventurers with nothing to do. So a really rich baron ends up basically setting up his own dungeon where adventurers can go in and pay to get in and, go in, adventure, look for gold, fight monsters and everything, and do that type of thing. And I thought that sounded like such a fun kind of premise. And it starts off with just a little bit, there's a little bit of a couple of paragraphs explaining it right at the beginning. And I'm like, this is so much fun. I did it. And I got in. And it more so, I still think that premise works and is fun, but the issues start arising with just sort of the way you get into it, where I feel like you're not really counting on your reader to understand things, or you're not giving your reader enough credit that you should kind of explain why things are happening. And that's where I started to fall into a little bit of a, type of reaction to some things here. The base plot otherwise is we have a young girl, Azra, and she is a vanisher, and she can vanish from place to place. And it's sort of that the fact that she has this type of magic is she apparently is ostracized from her village. We don't ever get a ton of background or anything as to their why, but she ends up being brought in with a group of other perspective, whether it's very well-known adventurers as well as just a group of other people. And there's a plot basically where somebody is planning to rob that dungeon and get away with it, because you come to find out that there are like all these different rules and taxes, so you can't really take money out if you get there. Like you're basically just adventuring for clout or to spend money in the village that's attached to it. You can't really just take it and get out and become rich elsewhere. And so it's, again, some of the stuff where you could explore that more as well here too. It kind of starts to take it. So we're trying to be a little bit more serious with this and show this as more of an injustice instead of it just being more of a fun thing, which I think is sort of a weird choice, which is the way the premise starts, the way it sounds, and then as you keep going. So I think that's part of it. Is the book doesn't feel like it knows what lane it wants to be in. And I sometimes feel like you get that with younger reading things, where maybe it'll be really light and really simple, but then they'll try to do something that's darker or more serious, to be like, look, there's serious stuff in here too. But if it doesn't feel like it fits and it doesn't really make sense and you don't explain it, that's where it kind of becomes a problem. Now, the book too, it had some fun moments as well, and some cool bits of action and creative things. It's more so really though, the further you get in, the less there's any explanation for things that happen, and it feels like the author is just expecting you to believe that this is what's happening, or this is the way these characters are reacting, or these characters suddenly are just formed this relationship out of nothing, no evidence or anything, and you're supposed to kind of go with it. And that's the thing that does really irritate me about some younger reading things. And this at points definitely felt more middle grade than YA to me as well, which I think is, you do have to be aware of how you're marketing a book, because if you tell me a book is YA, I'm not super likely to want to pick it up. But if it's actually more like middle grade and you're telling me it's YA, there's a really big difference. And there's a really big difference in who this is marketed to and who you're trying to, go after. It's important to know and to actually put that out there correctly. But there were definitely these moments, and I've seen this in other things too, like I said, where it's just, oh, this is just the way it is. you're just supposed to accept it. I'm not going to explain it. I'm not going to provide any depth. And I feel like that's ultimately is just you're not giving your readers enough credit. And it didn't feel, I have had some where it feels like it's talking down to the readers, like you probably don't understand what's happening. This didn't feel like that, which is a plus, but it just felt like it was, I'm just writing things, things are happening, and there's no rhyme or reason to it, and I'm just kind of expecting you to. So it felt like it was either just not really polished or not like ready to go, or that it's just expected you to kind of accept it. And if you're writing, even when you're writing for younger audiences, I feel like you should give them reason to believe it. Don't just expect people to accept things, because a discerning reader is a discerning reader. And I feel like these are some things that would probably annoy me a little bit when I was younger too. But again, if you're looking at the right audience, it makes a really big difference, because somebody who's like, a middle schooler is going to have a different reaction to somebody who's, an adult in their 30s and that type of thing as well. So that's where it becomes kind of important. And not all children's books do the kind of stuff too. And like, for example, I recently read A Wrinkle in Time for the first time, and I was pretty impressed with how it handled different elements. With it had some items there where it's doing some of the stuff it's meant for younger readers. It's kind of trying to have some like lessons in there as well too, but it never condescends to the reader. It never feels like you're having talked down to, or that you're just expected to believe. There's enough detail, there's enough depth, and I think that's really important. And like another children's book series I've talked about before, The Chronicles of Prydain, as well. It, Similarly there, it never feels like it's really talking down to the reader. It's just there are sometimes things in there that it's supposed to be a takeaway for kids. Like the version I had actually talks about like this is what the story deals with. So it's like you could even be reading it to your kids and kind of talking about that. But it's just you have to give the reader, even if it's a younger reader, some credit. You can't condescend to the reader, and you also have to give enough information that it just makes sense. Especially if you're trying to have a book that's intended for younger readers but can enjoyed by an older audience, you need to have enough there that you're not just reading it and being like, this doesn't make sense, or this hasn't happened. And it's not even to say this is just something that's done in like YA or younger reading things, but I feel like it's pretty prevalent there. But I will call it out when I read it in a book that's not marketed as YA and it's just like an adult book as well. But I feel like sometimes you get it where people try to write, like you see a lot in fantasy. People are saying like, oh, I'm writing an adult fantasy book, and they actually seem like they're more so writing like a YA book where it's a little bit simpler. It's using familiar elements. Maybe they're doing something a little bit different, but you're writing with like the originality or the depth that you tend to get there. And I think that's just part of it. Is a lot of YA does use more familiar elements, familiar tropes, and it's easy to familiarize yourself with. So it's a little bit easier to get into. And my preference is more so like the big epic fantasy. I love when I'm jumping into a brand new world. I have to learn all about it. There's nothing that's just instantly makes sense to me. I love digging into stuff like that, but that also takes somebody who wants to do that. And I think it makes sense. You have YA and things like that where it's a little bit easier to get into, and it's a preference. And that's why a lot of people like it when you just kind of want to read more casually and you don't want to have to devote a lot of time. It's 100% makes sense to me. But this is one of those books where I just felt like it didn't do a very good job of making things make sense. And it sort of sets some stuff up at the end. And just again, none of it really made sense. There's some characters that seem to have a relationship that nothing at all that's happened on page makes any sense or points to that being a thing. People making choices, or there's things that are supposed to be sort of twists, but it's because we've done nothing to like set these things up or provide any depth. It just kind of feels like, and then this happened. And if you're just telling your whole story like, and then this happened, and you never have any real reason, you might still have some people who kind of like it, but it's going to be a lot more limited. And I think it's just an issue that I sometimes have with younger reading books. And that's really what this one made me think of overall. So fun premise. I think there's a lot you could do with this. This is something I feel like could be reworked into be a little bit longer. And it's just over 100 pages. So that was the thing. It never really overstayed its welcome because it was so incredibly short. But I think it needed a lot more to really accomplish what it was doing. And so sometimes I'm saying books should be cut down. This, I think, needed to really try to flesh out, try to add more depth. And you can keep the same things for the most part if you want, but you need to put more into it. And expect a little bit more of your reader. And, just understand that, readers are typically, you're smart enough to understand what you're getting in. And so just, that's always the big thing, especially if you're writing for a younger audience. I just don't condescend to the reader, and especially if you're then going to try to get adults to review your book. don't do that, or at least be really upfront with it as well here too. So overall, those are my thoughts. Like I said, somewhat on this book, but more so just a discussion of my issue sometimes with younger reading things. So I hope this was valuable or interesting at least. And that's really all I have for this one. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the links in the description as always for my Patreon if you want to support what I do, as well as the Wizard of the Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, any books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.